Rebrands. We all love them. Actually, no. Most of the time we hate them. But usually there's some sort of thought or idea behind the new visual identity of a team. But in this story, everything that could go wrong did. From being accused of plagiarism to references to Nazi Germany, let me tell you about the Frölunda Hockey Club rebrand in 2022, which lasted 2 days and led to another attempt at a rebrand. But first, we need some background and we're gonna rewind to the 1990s. The NHLification of the Swedish Elitserien, which we today know as the SHL, is fully underway. Teams across the country notice a growing interest in the NHL, with not only its great players, but most importantly, cool logos, names, and hockey cards that the kids collect. Now, an important thing to note here is that in Sweden and many other European countries, a majority of teams aren't called city name followed by sharks or stars or bears, but instead it's the city or borough they're from, followed by, for example, IF or HK, which just translates into Sports Association or Hockey Club. For example, you have Djurgården's IF, which is a borough in Stockholm, followed by the Swedish initials for Sports Association, because this club is just not about hockey, they're active in football and other sports as well. And the logos for these teams are usually a representation of the community they're from. Some teams might have the coat of arms of their city, and some have other ways of showing their ties. I guess if we look at the NHL, the only real example we have of this is the Montreal Canadiens. But back to the 1990s, and teams are getting rid of their traditional names. For example, Djurgården's IF become the Lions, and they get new, cool logos as well. Now for most teams, this was a fad that quickly passed. It only took a few years and most teams had returned to their original names and logos. And when we entered the 2010s and 2020s, they were all forgotten except for one team. The Frölunda Indians were here to stay, and with their Native American logo, they were heading into the future. Now this logo was widely discussed and debated right from its inception in 1995. We're not going to get into all the details and intricacies, but a lot of the debates can be compared to the ones that have surrounded the Chicago Blackhawks logo. But one of the main gripes that were had with this logo is that it had no connection to the team or the city of Gothenburg, where Frölunda are from. There were loose ties to their 1960s success and how they were called the Wild West, but ultimately, a Native American has nothing to do with Gothenburg, and fans wanted a change and see a return to a logo that actually represented them. And in 2020, the club announced they were going to adhere to these demands. Now, Frölunda have had logos in the past that have more historical ties, and during the process, the club wanted to incorporate these old elements into their new logo. Now, another important thing to note that in Sweden, clubs are ruled at its very core by the members of the club. These are ordinary people, just like you and me, and all you have to do is buy a membership every year for around $30 to $50 depending on the club. This gives you a right to vote at the annual meeting, meaning that you, as a fan, have the possibility to create change and have control over your club. This membership system is also structured in a way that makes it so that members will always have majority control of the club. Essentially, it's the 50+1 rule that you might be familiar with if you watch German football. So, this means that Frölunda can't become the Frölunda Red Bulls, for example. This whole 50+1 thing is a different topic in itself, so we won't dive much deeper into it, but just know at its very core, members are supposed to be able to vote for the change they want. Now in this case, the choice to get rid of the Native American logo was not up for the members to vote on. This change was initiated by the board, but on the other hand, the members never voted to introduce it to begin with. So 2 years later, February 2022, Frölunda announced that they're done. The new logo and visual identity has been completed, and there will be a reveal and press conference. So, D-Day is here, and with words like forwards together and other buzzwords, the logo is revealed, and yeah, that's what they came up with. Frölunda outsourced this whole design process to an advertising agency and just gave them some prompts to work with, and I just think it sounds like you're feeding an AI with some prompts and it just spits out some garbage, and that's what people thought of this logo. Garbage. Ugly. Just plain awful. In fact, it was so bad that the attendees were stunned enough to the point where the Frölunda chairman had to tell them that they were allowed to applaud the new logo. During the whole design process, an independent designer by the name of Visla Graphic had created his own concept with a very detailed presentation which a lot of fans had already become very fond of. They thought it represented the city and the team in a very good way, and I will leave a link in the description below if you want to see the full presentation because it's really impressive. So back to the logo that Frölunda presented. What do you see when you take a look at this? What Frölunda wants you to see is the following. The two Fs that are rotated. The Fs are for Frölunda but also represent, and get this, hockey gloves. The Fs are supposed to be hockey gloves, guys. That together with these two Fs hold hands and they go into the future together with the motto, forwards together. Yeah, it sounds and looks pretty corporate. In the negative space, we're supposed to see an H, which stands for hockey. Guys, remember, they play hockey. But, I also see an S, which was not planned. The circle isn't symmetrical either, so that just piles on the madness in this logo. Here are some of the elements they worked with during the design process. The bottom two elements being historic symbols for Frölunda, and no, that's not a Van Halen logo by the way. It was also designed with two different colors in mind, one in green and white and one in red and white. Now, the reactions to this were bad. No one liked it, and the day after it was revealed, Frölunda announced a new signing. A new player is joining the club, but all the replies cared about was making their point about how they hated this logo. And the independent logo we saw earlier became a symbol of resistance and disgust with what Frölunda had done. Remember how we talked about how the members of the club are supposed to vote? Well, they weren't invited to partake in the process. Frölunda just did their own thing with little to no fan input. There was supposedly a focus group, but not much has been said about that. Now, here's the funny part. The logo was immediately criticized, which makes sense, not just for how awful it was, but also how much it resembled other logos, especially these two. The one on the left being a now defunct, but at the time active sportswear company, and on the right, a building maintenance company. Now, they weren't very happy about this, and neither were Frölunda, because not only had they hired an advertising agency to create the logo, they had also hired a different company for the specific purpose of making sure that the logo does not look like an already existing logo. But the most bizarre outcome from all of this was the fact that some people drew ties to Nazi Germany imagery, and it went so far that a Swedish far-right publication applauded the logo for its likeness to this imagery, and they called it genius. So with all of this in mind, just 48 hours after its reveal, Frölunda announced the logo would be scrapped and they would start over, this time with more input from its members, and so a new process began. Now this process lasted about 2 months, and in April they could reveal 3 logos that the members could vote for. 2 of them being designed by their in-house designer Ephraim Larsson, and the third being the independent logo we already talked about created by Visla Graphic. So the members vote, and in the end, this was the winner. It has clear ties to older logos, and most importantly, the fans liked it. And I think that's the most important takeaway here. It's not everyone's taste, and we need to understand the difference between European logos and North American logos, which are more brands than local imagery. That's why I think this whole Utah Hockey Club will just look stupid in the NHL. I know it's just a one-year solution, but the logo and the name is not the way of an American franchise-based sport, while over in Europe, it would work better. Now, this whole story is a shit show. It cost the club a lot of money, but it was also incredibly embarrassing for them. There had always been debates about the old logo with the Native American and its relevance to a team from Sweden, which I think is a very fair point, and I personally wanted to see it scrapped just for that reason. But I also think it's interesting to see the ties to the discussions we're seeing in North America, like we did with the now Washington Commanders, but even more relevant, the Chicago Blackhawks. I think these discussions are linked in a way, but I recognize that North American sports and their branding are inherently very different from its European counterparts, and that's kind of been the point I've been trying to hammer down in this video. But I also think it's linked to how people will see a Native American logo in different ways. In Sweden, I get the sense that a majority of people wanted this logo gone just because of the simple fact that it doesn't really have any relevance. While in North America, it's much deeper than that, and that's a discussion where I feel I would be way out of my depth. So, what do you guys make of this whole debacle? What logo out of these three do you prefer? I personally think the current logo is an upgrade. I realized it's not what the NHL crowd wants or are used to, but again, different cultures. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me just say this is a video I've been wanting to make for a very long time now. It's a subject that is very near and dear to me, and I even ended up writing a whole ass university paper on this, so I could talk about this for hours, but I will end it here. I hope you liked the video. If you didn't, then you can press the dislike button, I guess, but if you liked it, you can press like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.